Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a good day. I just wanted to come and do a little presentation for you guys on how to write a book review because the Manifest Destinies book review is coming up. This one's really short. It's only about like 8 or 9 slides. Also, sorry if there's background noise. I'm in a central currently. Okay, so let's start. So, what's a book review, right? Purdue Owl says it's a typically evaluates recently written works, offers a brief description of the text's key points, and often provides a short appraisal of the strengths and weaknesses of those works. So, some characteristics of a book review, and these are all things that you should have in yours, is a summary, an analysis, key themes, and then ultimately, would you recommend the book? Okay, so within your book review, you're going to have three main parts, right? You're going to have your introduction, your body, which is going to be the biggest point, and then your conclusion. So, in the introduction, of course, you're going to start with an attention getter or a hook. Um, Traditionally, you can always start with a quote if you found a quote that was really interesting or like very shocking to you. You could start with a statistic that was within the book. But because this is a book review, you want to make sure that any quotes you use or any sources that you use are just the book. You don't want any outside sources. This isn't, cross referencing, anything like that. Anything that you use should be from the book. So then you want to do like a one sentence summary. So essentially, just like in one sentence, what is the book about? Like of course, we're doing ours on Manifest Destiny, so it should be relevant to that. Um, and so then you want a thesis, right? So the thesis is, in the case of a book review, so when you're doing your thesis, right, you're using the author's arguments to create your own thesis. You're not restating the author's thesis. So it would be, again, what they're arguing, key themes, and they should be arguments that you yourself are going to go in and analyze um, in the paper. And then again, always want to make sure you have your transition sentences. So the last line of your intro paragraph should be going from your introduction into the body. So now the body of it should have a summary of the book, um, not the entire book, just kind of the main points, the author's arguments again, and we'll go into what those could look like, an analysis of key book themes, so similar to arguments, whether you would recommend the book or not, right? Because essentially it's a book review, you're telling people whether you would also read it. And again, transition sentences. Something else too, topic sentences. Before you start a new paragraph, make sure you have your first sentence saying what that paragraph is going to be about. That way it flows better and it's not just one just giant stream of thought. And then your conclusion. So again, you're going to restate your thesis that is based off the author's arguments. And then you're going to restate all of the author's arguments that you talked about in your review. And then you're going to end with like one big takeaway or just something uh, just satisfying that the reader can read at the very end. Okay, so some key points about the summary. It should be 1 or 2 paragraphs long. They can be a little bit longer, but you're just recounting the main points of the book. It shouldn't be like 3 pages long. You're focusing again on the main points. So while you're reading, you should be making notes of what the author maybe keeps reiterating. Like if the author has mentioned it already 4 times within a chapter, then you know it's something important. And then keep quotes to a minimum when you're summarizing. If possible, just don't put any quotes. It should all be from what you remember and putting it into your own words. Again, you're including any of the author's arguments and then also the purpose of the book, which will also go a little bit more into that. Okay, so when you're analyzing a book is basically you just critiquing the various themes and ideas that the author argues or proposes in the book. So, the author's argument. These are questions to ask yourself and essentially answer within your paper. So, is the author in support or opposition of something? Is the author critiquing something? Is the author, commenting on some part of society? The significance of the book. How is the book significant to its field, right? So, what point of view is the author writing from? Is the book adding anything new to its field, right? Or is it just something that you've read over and over and over again? Does the book offer avenues for further research? So this is essentially the author being like, listen, I can't possibly cover everything, but I think that this would be good to dive into this other topic. And then the significance to the reader being you, right? Or who the book is written for, right? Is the book relevant to you? Do you find it important in what your everyday life is? Or again, who is the book written for if not you? Are there preconceived notions you had going in that the author cleared up? So that's another big one. If you went in thinking something and the author, totally cleared that up, make sure to note that. Okay, so now we're going to go into the would you recommend it, would you not recommend it? So if you would recommend it, then these are just some reasons that you would, right? The author backs up their arguments. The book was easy to follow. The book was fun to read. The author has very convincing arguments that are backed up. Author makes even the smallest details clear. So a lot of times authors will have notes, and if you read the notes, which is like the little numbers after a sentence, kind of looks like a little exponent, that'll clear up something possibly that's a little confusing to the reader. And then the author allows room for further development of the topic. The author isn't saying like, this is all the research, nothing else should be written about it. And then reasons not to recommend the book. The author's arguments are weak, so they're not citing any sources. They are their own source. If they're an expert in the field, sometimes that's okay, but you have to kind of weigh that decision out. Author provides inaccurate information. So if they're saying something that you know for a fact goes against what everybody else in the field is saying, that's a reason not to recommend it. And write about that, right? Book has inconsistency. So if earlier they say something about the book, but then later on they say something different about that same topic, then you need to note that as well. Author does not include opposing views. So if they're all in opposition of something or all in support of something, but then they don't give any counter arguments, then that's also a red flag. And then the author does not provide credible sources. Again, if they're an expert in the field, that might be okay, but generally, even if they're an expert, they will cite other experts in the field. Okay, so now we're going to go into just a couple things to remember. Cite your sources, okay? So even if you're paraphrasing something or if you're recalling something from within the chapter, if it's not a direct quote, you still want to cite it at the end. So you can either use APA or MLA citation. In APA, it's the last name and then the year, or in MLA, it's the last name and then the page number. And again, the only source that you should be using is the book that you're citing. Again, use transition sentences. Make sure you're flowing from one paragraph to another. It's not one big stream of thoughts. Topic sentences so that the audience knows what they're going to be reading in that paragraph. Don't just summarize, right? Put in your analysis and your own critique. And then when quoting the author, if you need to quote the author, make sure it's 3 lines or less. Otherwise, that is just too much of the actual book within your review. And so you might need to paraphrase that point. And then here's just a few resources. So there's Purdue OWL, which I'll provide a link for, but hopefully in the PowerPoint you're able to click it. And then there's also the USC Writing Guide, which I found a lot of useful information. And then again, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to email me. Emails all over Canvas, or you can just email me on Canvas. But hopefully this was helpful. And you guys have a better idea of what to do going into your book review.